This is Take Charge Your Health with Corinne Furnari, clinical nutritionist, physician assistant, and Carol Petersen, pharmacist. Listen, learn, and I hope you enjoy the show. Bye!
Welcome back. This is Take Charge of Your Health with Corinne Furnari, clinical nutritionist and physician assistant, and my co-host, Carol Petersen, pharmacist. Every week, we present you with new and creative ways to help you make sense of health information and bring it home to you and your family. With years of clinical experience between us and research into traditional and cutting-edge technologies, we give you practical information to help you take charge of your health. Welcome back. Welcome back. We're here again today. I'm here with my co-host,
Carol Petersen.
And we have a subject. We're going to ask Carol to introduce it, but it is, I want to say a couple of things. It is big. It's a very big, very important subject. When you look it up, there's tremendous literature on it. Lots of studies, lots of documentation, all lined up. And yet, most of us really haven't heard about this or how important it is. So I'm going to pass it to Carol. She can introduce the subject and we can begin discussing it. It is such a big topic. I do believe we're going to need two shows on it.
Maybe three.
Maybe three, because like I said, it's such a big topic. It's amazing. So, Carol, why not begin and introduce the subject, please, for us?
Okay, my pleasure. So, usually every week we're wondering what to talk about next. And I happen to find one of Dr. Jonathan Wright's Green Medicine newsletter. And this article is written by Dr. John Sherman. He's a naturopath. So obviously naturopathic physicians have a little bit different perspective on what's going on in your body. And his article is called The Unseen Epidemic, Fatty Liver Disease. So there's two types actually that we've distinguished, because very early on, it was noted that alcoholics, people who consumed a lot of alcohol, like over 4 glasses of alcohol per day, developed fatty liver disease. So this was called alcoholic fatty liver disease. So this is accumulation of fat on the liver. Just as an aside, there's a perspective on that. It may not be the alcohol itself, but the extreme lack of nutrients that people who are very heavy consumers of alcohol tend to have. But now we have a whole new category, and it's called non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. And this is where people are not ingesting alcohol at all, so they couldn't explain it at first. And as it's happening, problems with our livers, with a buildup of fat on our livers, in our livers, it is assumed now that the incidence may be as high as 10% of the population. And this includes even children.
Yes, well, they're saying 20% of children and 10% of the total population. So this liver disease is higher in children than it is even in the adult population, whereas before we thought this was an adult population disease, but it really isn't. It now has become a very serious problem in children. Go on, Carol.
So it's a bit silent, but there are indicators of what's going on, and your liver will work all the way up to when it gets to just 5% of liver volume is active. It can still be working for you, which is really something tremendous. And we already know you can cut off chunks of the liver and it restores itself. It's a tremendously restorative organ. So there's some early symptoms, very early symptoms. You might start feeling some fatigue, or the upper quadrant on the right side of your abdomen. You may feel some pain there. That could be some of this getting started. As this progresses, you get more symptoms. They creep in, such as itchy skin, can be itchy skin, shortness of breath. And this is due to the liver gets enlarged. So it's taking up more space in your abdominal cavity and putting some pressure on your diaphragm so you don't breathe as deeply. And you can get spider veins. You can get swelling in your legs. And as it progresses and becomes even more serious, there can be a yellowing of the skin and the eyes. This is coming from an inability for the liver to convert beta carotene into active vitamin A, which is one of its things. And then fluid buildup within the abdomen. This is called ascites, and this is something that's noted with cancer patients. They can have this buildup in their abdomen. This is coming from poor liver function. Corinne, do you have anything to
a
say?
little bit.
You look like
I got a little bit to add. So what we're talking about, and some of the causes can be high blood pressure, high basal metabolic index. So also hyperglycemia, which we're seeing. Diabetics have a very high tendency toward this. High triglycerides. So when our triglycerides are high, we have to start thinking about our liver. And we also see it in low HDLs. Then the liver is not being protected. It's defined by what drives a systemic dysfunction in the entire body. 98% of previous non-alcoholic fatty liver disease meets this new criteria of this epidemic that we're seeing in liver disease. The silent epidemic in youths, because very often although you mentioned some of the things that we see, very often it's a silent epidemic, and we really do not know until it's quite advanced. We find that 21%, I said 20, there are 21% of adolescents have this fatty liver disease, and we find it reacts differently. It's different in different ethnicities. We find one of the highest percent, 30%, in Hispanic adolescents. We find non-Hispanic Asians at 19%. We find non-Hispanic Blacks in 18%, and non-Hispanic whites in 17%. And so we've got some real numbers here when we're talking about national averages. So what we found, and this is a very interesting statement, is that 50% of our calories, 50% of them, are made of ultra-processed foods. Ultra-processed foods. 50% of our calories come from ultra-processed foods, which have a direct negative effect on the liver. In ultra-fast ultra-processed foods, intake correlates with a significantly higher and severe disease risk. So when they're high ultra-processed foods, we're dealing with an increase in fatty liver disease. And the mechanism of that is that ultra-processed foods bypass natural safety and satiety signals, leading to passive overconsumption. So when you have ultra-processed foods, you're really not getting a sensation of feeling satisfied. So you uptake more food. You also have this food that has a direct effect on the liver, and what you're ending up is a disease on the liver. And with kids, it's particularly insidious in that they really don't and really can't sense or feel different sensations. They just react. They're just totally reactive. And we're seeing it in the effect that this is having on their liver. Carol?
Okay, so one of the clues that you just mentioned is the triglycerides, the high triglycerides. And this is a mechanism your body uses to turn glucose into a fat that can be stored. So that triglyceride number you see on your cholesterol panel is probably much more important than your total cholesterol, unless it's low. That's another talk we did about. But I digress a little bit. So one of the big things, and this happened, guess what happened in the 1970s? We started putting high corn fructose into everything, which as a sweetener, we got away from. Do you remember pure cane sugar from Hawaii?
Yes, I remember that one.
Yeah. Well, we went away from the cane sugar and started using this byproduct of corn growing as a sweetener. And this interesting thing happens when you use this sweetener, and it's in a lot of processed foods, as you already talked about. It's, a soda. If you were to drink a Coca-Cola in the U.S., it's got high fructose corn syrup in it.
But in Mexico, it doesn't.
No.
In Europe, it doesn't.
No, people seek this out. We're actually the biggest consumer of high fructose corn syrup in the world, in the U.S. So obviously we're having issues with the fatty liver stuff. So what else is happening is that this high glucose corn syrup does not raise insulin. So that usual mechanism for getting insulin to elevate a bit when you're eating and to get glucose inside the cells where you can actually use the glucose as energy, that step is bypassed. And the fructose is absorbed directly into the cells, and then it does split into glucose eventually. And that glucose ends up not being available for energy. Your body protects itself by creating the triglyceride and storing it away as fat. There have been two good books about this. Dr. David Perlmutter wrote a book called Drop Acid, and then there's an original researcher who has a book too. I forget the title. Richard Johnson did the work on this high fructose corn syrup stuff. And you can also see this on the laboratory. They often report uric acid. So high uric acids indicate that you have a problem with too much high fructose corn syrup. So one of your techniques to protect yourself from fatty liver disease is to wipe out high fructose corn syrup right out of your diet. Choose whole foods. I was listening to Ruff Jaffe. He said the only liquids you should have is water and herbal teas. Stay away from all those soda pop kind of things, and you can avoid one of the biggest toxicants that we have, leading to problems with our liver. Corinne?
Yes, so what we have is an epigenetic dysregulation, and that it means that we're getting the dysregulation from our environment. And it's not our genetics. There's a genetic component here in that some people, and it's how much fat our liver can store. And some people, some of their genetics, like why do black young kids with the same amount of consumption have lower fatty liver disease? It's because they don't store their fat in their liver. They store it in their bodies. Whereas, so you might see a child who's overweight, but yet their liver isn't being affected to the degree that in other children they're being affected. And so what we have, though, is that the epigenetic, our environment, is dysregulating or creating a dysregulation in and it's altering our DNA, our effect on our liver. Our liver is something we take for granted, many of us. It's there. It's sort of like the assistant that we dump all the work on. They get to do all the work and everybody else gets the attention. But the liver is the base. It's the base of our metabolism. It's our ability to metabolize. But there's another way. There are multiple ways that we can dysregulate the liver. And one of the ways is through our intestines. Very important way also. So, can you go there, Carol?
I'll go there a little. There's a high correlation of fatty liver disease when you do not have enough stomach acid. So there's a big association with using antacids, whether they're the drugs or it's the Maloxes of the pharmacy world. If you're having to use that, you already have a propensity. Before I leave that high fructose corn syrup, I just want to say one thing. One doctor I heard speaking said, even one can of a soda with high fructose corn syrup is already storing fat in your liver. And just magnify that by how much some people actually consume of those things. You can tell if you have fatty liver if you had a CAT scan. I was having dinner with two work colleagues, and Tim said he used to work in a lab where they did CAT scans, and they were doing CAT scans for something else most of the time, but he said you would be amazed. He said almost all of the people that came to have a CAT scan also presented for fatty liver. You could see it very easily on the CAT scan. You can also see it on an ultrasound, which is a less invasive kind of thing. You can image that fatty liver. And as I mentioned before, the fatty liver does increase in size and take up more space in your abdomen. We regulate. Do we want to go into testing for the serum tests?
Yes, I definitely do. I was going to ask you a rhetorical question. I was going to say, how come people aren't able to identify fatty liver through blood tests? You know, we have 3 different tests for liver function. We have a GOT, an ASOT, and ALT. why aren't they showing us that there is a fatty liver, or are they? Well, I'm just going to say one other thing about that. Very often, people with quite advanced fatty liver have normal liver enzymes. How can that be? Can you explain that to us, Carol?
Well, they can. And again, back to my earlier point, your liver is trying to keep up with everything, even when it's overtaken by fat to the point of there's only 10% tissue activity. So these tests, the ALT, the AST, GGT, and LDH, these are all enzymes that are made by the liver. And when some of these are excessively high, it means the liver is breaking down. And one of the notable things is the AST number will increase, particularly with non-alcoholic fatty livers. So that one could be higher. Russ Jaffe, in his presentation in a recent thing I was watching, he said on those liver enzymes, when you look at those on a test, those enzymes should be on the low end of the range. Even as you're starting to get to the mid-level and higher, they're giving you clues about what's going on with the liver. There's also a ratio. I'm going to look this up. You do there's an association with the AST liver enzyme and platelets, and you can do a calculation to see how much fibrotic tissue you might have in your liver. So this is the consequence of, as your liver's getting fatty, ultimately it starts becoming more and more fibrotic, and this is a much more dangerous situation. Fibrotic tissue equals liver cirrhosis, and pretty soon you have complete failure of the liver. So then what do? We give you a liver transplant.
Well,
So I wanted to give you statistics on that if I could, and then take it. So in 2022, there were 9,527 liver transplants. In 2012, there was a 52% increase in that number. Unfortunately, there are 17,500 people that are in liver transplant waiting lists.
Ay.
And about 1,700 of these people die every year waiting for a liver transplant.
For a liver. How sad.
I know. That's pretty sad.
Part is that this is all preventable. This is all about lifestyle and exposures. You know, the diet, blah, 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 our epigenetic code, suppressing glucose regulation and priming the liver for fibrosis. So I want to go back to the gut. And why is it so important? See, there are two portals of blood into the liver. One is through the intestine and the other is through the aorta. And so what happens is, if the gut isn't digesting correctly, if the gut barrier is broken through what they call dysbiosis, leaky gut, liver, and it creates damage going into the liver, which the liver can't keep up with because the gut is not creating or maintaining its barrier function. So everything moves back into the liver, and the liver is then being overwhelmed, because first you have the toxins that are coming in from the intestines, but you also have not only the toxins coming in from the intestine, you have those same toxins coming in through the bloodstream. So you have leaking into the liver, leaking into the bloodstream, all being dumped into the liver. to be able to begin a detox process. Carol?
So we have a good example with estrogen metabolism, for instance. We call it hepatic recirculation. And what happens is your liver has put an enzyme on that estrogen molecule, making it water soluble, throws it into the intestines to get rid of it. And then it gets uncoupled because microbiome in that intestine may have beta glucuronidase, which uncouples it, becomes fat soluble again, goes right back into the bloodstream on its way to the liver. So you are exhausting your liver with trying to put conjugates with, and it can be sulfation, methylation, glucuronidation, acetylation, all sorts of ways the liver can dispose of that extra estrogen, but you're forcing that liver to process the same estrogen over and over again.
Plus, guess what? You're taking exogenous hormones. You're taking hormones in to balance your hormones, and you're taking hormone mimickers into your body, and you wonder why you're not being balanced. What's happening? I'm taking these hormones. Why am I not able to balance myself? You know, it was interesting when I first started working with people and they would walk, specifically on hormones, they would walk in my office and I'd say, well, how are your bowels? And one woman said, I'm not here about my bowels. I'm here for hormones. So why does that matter? And I'll never forget that. It matters because if the bowels aren't working, if you're chronically constipated, and what happens is and if your probiotics are not there to protect you, what happens is that you're just reabsorbing the hormones, you're reabsorbing toxic fats, you're reabsorbing the pesticides, and there you go. It goes back into the liver. Again, it goes back into the liver through the portal, the blood from the aorta, where it's been absorbed and goes through the entire body, and or through the portal from the intestines. But guess what? We got a way to deal with that. Surprise, surprise. Do you want to start? Do you want me to start?
You start. I don't know what you have in mind. I have a whole list of things.
Okay, well, I'll start. First of all, hydrochloric acid. Very essential. It helps break down proteins. It literally washes the food when it enters the intestines. So it's killing bacteria, killing fungus, killing viral parts because it's an acidity of 1 to 2, very high acidity. Battery acid is 1. So your stomach is carrying the acidity of something equivalent to a car battery, if it's correct, if it's being done correctly. So you've got, first of all, hydrochloric acid. Then you've got digestive enzymes. And digestive enzymes are very important because they help you break down the carbohydrates and assist your digestion. So now the food has gone into the stomach. Its stomach doesn't digest. We always think of the stomach as a digester, but it isn't. It doesn't digest. It's a cleanser, and it's preparing the food to be digested in the small intestine. So what happens is it's got the food well prepared for the small intestine to work. But then the correct enzymes and correct hydrochloric acid and fibers work in the intestines, and good foods work in the intestines, stimulating and supporting probiotics. And probiotics are very important in that there is an acromantia that is in the intestines, which literally cleans up mucus that's blocking digestion and helps heal the intestinal wall. Very powerful and very supportive of liver function. Now, do you want to take it, Carol?
Okay, I will jump to vitamin C.
Yay.
I listened to a lecture by Dr. Thomas Levy, and he's written books on this topic too. And he says that all toxicants are pro-oxidant. So vitamin C acts like a pretty strong antioxidant. So in order to break down some of these toxins, your liver does need quite a lot of vitamin C to be able to do that. And most animals make plenty of vitamin C on their own. I think it's we as human beings and guinea pigs don't happen to do that.
Ability. We did it one time.
That's what some people say.
10,000 years ago,
We're genetic
presently
aberrations here that we can't make our own vitamin C. So we're forced to get it in our diet. And then both Dr. Levi and Russ Jaffe talked about doing a vitamin C flush. And this is how you determine what your vitamin C intake should be. And then you use 4 or 5 grams. They recommend doing this with powder. And powdered vitamin C can be either ascorbic acid or sodium ascorbate. They said it can be either. The sodium ascorbate is much easier on your gut. Some people get some gut pain with the ascorbic acid. And you do this dose every 1 hour until you develop diarrhea. And then you know how much you had to use to get to the diarrhea situation.
Then you back off a little bit.
You back off, but now you know your dose for every day. The dose that's just short, and then you use that dose. Let's say you had 5 grams and it took 6 times. So that's going to be 30 grams of vitamin C. That's quite a lot. That's 6 teaspoons full, but you don't take it all at once.
No.
You take it throughout the day. Your end goal is not to create the diarrhea anymore, but be just short of it, but give your body a stable amount of vitamin C. And it can be quite helpful for helping the liver handle all these toxic substances.
There's something else about vitamin C that has its uniqueness. There are some days where you need more vitamin C than your general limit. And that like you've been exposed to a flu, you've catching a cold, you're catching a flu. So you can take higher amounts of vitamin C on those days and your body has a higher tolerance. But then when that exposure has been dealt with and your immune system has dealt with it, you take that same amount and it's too much. So your vitamin C varies according to your exposures and your needs. And so you might start out needing a very high amount, but as your body saturates the C, you might need lower and lower amounts to maintain your optimal function. But understand, if you have an exposure, you can then, with the exposure, you can then need more again. So it's always a variable and it's something to keep an eye on. You know, there are hidden triggers, endocrine disruptors, and in our exposures. And this one source is chemicals. Very important source is chemicals. Vitamin C can break down some of those chemicals and help you flush them out of the body. Vitamin C also keeps your bowels moving or can, particularly when you put it with magnesium and magnesium citrate. So the faster that your bowels are moving, if they're moving once a day or twice a day, you're going to have lower exposure to these chemicals. Another is that chronic low-grade inflammation can be very hard on the liver, because the liver is also fighting inflammation, and it's a very important piece. There's another big risk that we don't even think about. In our medicine cabinet, what we have is multiple medicines, some for stuffy nose, some for a headache, some for pain, some for cold and flu, some for, and when you really look at these formulas, every single one of them has a significant portion of acetaminophen in them. Over 600 different pharmaceuticals have, some by prescription, some for over-the-counter, have significant amounts of acetaminophen or Tylenol, which is the number one cause of liver failure that exists, is Tylenol overdose. And some of it is intentional, but the majority of it is that we didn't really know. We had no idea that we were taking so much Tylenol, because it's in almost everything we're taking, from cold to flu to sleep to pain to right down to when we have these antispasmodics that we get by prescription. They're half acetaminophen, and nobody's really telling us. Carol?
Well, RFK just alerted us to Tylenol increasing damage to children after they had a vaccination. And Tylenol blocks your body's ability to make glutathione, which is the liver's number one detoxifying molecule. And so at the same time you are injecting some pretty toxic stuff into a child, you're blocking the liver's ability to get rid of those same toxins by giving Tylenol at the same time. So this is really crucial. But you're quite right. It's ubiquitous. It's everywhere, and it blocks your glutathione. They say in the centenarians, one of the things that they have that keeps them living long and well is they have naturally high glutathione. So that's how important it is that your liver be able to make that enzyme to clear out toxicants. So another thing about that, N-acetylcysteine can also be used, and it's it helps your body make more glutathione. It has a precursor, it's a precursor amino acid, so you can bump up your glutathione with using that. In fact, it's been used in hospitals where there are Tylenol overdoses to rescue people from death when they've had these overdoses. That's the thing to rescue people with.
Then another support, very powerful, like NAC, for the liver is lipoic acid. And we can get high amounts of lipoic acid in our foods. And one piece of it is a thing that's very high in lipoic acid is cilantro. Cilantro, I make in my house a cilantro pesto. It's delicious. It's different, but it's delicious. My whole family loves it. I take fresh cilantro. I chop it up fine. I put some olive oil on it. I put sometimes I use walnuts, sometimes I use pine nuts. I put some walnuts or pine nuts. I put a little garlic, which is also very good for the liver and a detoxer. And then I blend it all up and we put it over our food. We put it on toast, we put it on crackers, we put it over pastas as a sauce. It's absolutely delicious. It's a different than what we're used to because usually they use parsley, which is also good for the liver and particularly good for the kidneys. Parsley is. So it's a wonderful way of getting high lipoic acid, but also lipoic acid helps balance blood sugar, which elevated blood sugar acts as a problem with with uh with your liver. The liver is trying to balance our blood sugar. And so it's another nutrient that we can use that can be very important and very beneficial. So,
Dr.
back
Russ,
to you.
Dr. Russ Chappie gives a whole support program, although he didn't say exactly what doses on these things, but he said for fatty liver, these are the things that you should have to help your liver. It's carotenoids, that's vitamin A, B complex, C, as we talked about, vitamin D. Vitamin D is hugely important for multiple reactions in our body. You should have a source of vitamin E, all 8 forms of vitamin sulfur, and short chain and medium chain triglycerides, the fatty acids, will help your liver. Also, you need magnesium. And he recommends that you can detoxify. Definitely, we have a deficiency of magnesium going on when we have a lot of toxicants. And he recommends using magnesium in high doses along with choline citrate. The choline helps you absorb the magnesium. So he recommends that as a partnership.
So I'm going to bounce back to testing, and that often even normal levels in our blood tests with a fatty liver is just too low sensitivity to be able to pick it up. So what they're recommending and what a new recommendation is a sonogram where you look at the belly and you literally look at the liver. And you can see with that, it's a direct measurement. You can see the stiffness, you can see the fat, you can see fibrosis forming and create all these percentages. It's an easy test. You just put a little cream on your stomach and then run the sonogram over the upper right quadrant, the liver, and you will have a diagnosis. And they're recommending that all obese kids have this test. Because what happens is when you're 17 years old, 16 years old, even 12-year-olds, when you have fatty liver disease at that time, you're going to need a transplant by the time you're 30 if you don't intercede. Yeah, 30.
Oh, wow.
But
Wow.
I know that's what Dr. Sidney Baker, a very prominent pediatrician, told me, that this is very serious. But you know what? It can be turned around. It can be turned around. But we're not going to go into them today. I've got a giant list of herbs that work beautifully for liver disease. American herbs, Ayurvedic herbs, Chinese herbs, and nutrients that support their action. But none of them work. None of this will work if we don't deal with our diet. If our diet isn't dealt with correctly, you can't, it's like trying to fight the tide. and hold back the tide. You can't.
No.
The most
Good nutrition for your liver is so important. But I want to bring up another relatively big subject for the last 10 minutes or so that we have. And this is something else that descended upon us in the 1970s, circa 1970s. What happened to us? The United States started using glyphosate, or Roundup is its commercial name by Monsanto. And this is supposed to be a powerful insecticide. And it is. And we were told that humans don't have this interruption in enzymes that work on the insects. However, those people think and thought that glyphosate is perfectly safe, forgot entirely about our microbiome. And our microbiome has pathways that are also interrupted by this same glyphosate. So we're having all kinds of destruction of our healthy microbiome. We're having destruction of our cell junctions. But this is from Stephanie Seneff, and she's written books on this topic. And if you get a chance to listen to her, maybe we should try to get her on our show.
That would be wonderful. She's a professor, or was a professor at MIT.
Right,
Brilliant
right.
lady.
And once she learned about glyphosate, there was no going back for her because it's so pervasive. And this interference of this molecule. And here's what she said. There's an important enzyme called PEPCK that our liver has to use. And it directly inhibits that particular enzyme. And she said, this is her theory, that we have so many proteins that have the amino acid glycine in our proteins. And this glyphosate molecule can fit into those places that glycine is supposed to be. So you take a protein like collagen, for instance, as she said, which to my surprise is so big. And I think collagen's important. I use it. But she said every second amino acid in that chain that makes up the collagen proteins is glycine. So there's multiple places that you need to put that in where glyphosate may have inserted itself. And in fact, she said, I think it does this. She said, our glutathione molecule, which we were just talking about, how important this is for our liver detoxification. Guess what? That has 3 amino acids. One of them is glycine when your body makes it. So she thinks that we create a monster glutathione molecule when the glyphosate is inserting itself into that peptide, which glutathione is a peptide, and inserting itself instead of glycine. We have this alteration. And of course, it's not going to work then. So she said the amount of glyphosate that has been used on our soils has increased steadily ever since the 1970s. Our EPA is not protecting us. They will check once in a while for levels of glyphosate in foods, and they've done it on cows and see how it's happened when the cows eat grass that has glyphosate has been either deliberately put on it or it's drifted with the winds. And so they can find it, and they just keep putting it upward, the safe level of glyphosate, without any real safety studies at all. It's just that now they're finding bigger levels. They're finding bigger levels all across the population. So that's normal.
So what else is happening that's really important is that Europe, I know Italy has banned glyphosate on their in their country. So it has been blocked. Europe is starting to stand up and to stop, because we also know not only does it pass the barrier intestinally, it passes the blood-brain barrier, a very, very important fact. So where do we begin? We got a few minutes left.
Okay, wait. I want.
Restore
Don't know.
very quick, Carol.
I want to say how you can get rid of that glyphosate before we drop everybody.
Oh, good.
So if I can, and this are her recommendations: fulvic and humic acid, something like Vegemite clay, she said. But this is a surprising thing: sauerkraut juice. This was a study done in cows, by the way, and they were able to document definite lower levels of glyphosate when they did this. And she goes, why the sauerkraut? She believes that it's because of the bacteria in the ferment. And she said, we need to look into this more. She says, acetobacteria will digest glyphosate, and probably in the sauerkraut juice. But guess what else that we just talked about? Apple cider vinegar.
Oh, what?
Wow.
I love that.
I know.
love that.
And add kimchi and kombucha to that list as the ferments. This is what she's suggesting.
So we want to begin by restoring homeostasis, which means you eliminate as many of the offenders as possible. You're going to eliminate sodas. You're going to eliminate processed nitrated meats. You're going to eliminate all these processed foods, these cookies that are made in the store, potato chips, all food, Doritos, which are straight chemicals. We're going to embrace real food. We're going to embrace fish, real meats. We're going to embrace natural fruit salads. So we're not eliminating sugar. We're going to embrace lots of different greens, but be aware that certain greens have certain blockers for digestion. So you slightly steam them and you remove and break down those blockers. And what happens is that you begin a process of repair. And your liver, just like Carol said, you can cut a piece of your liver out and it can regrow. Your liver is very forgiving. So what we want to do is support it. Carol, what's your website?
My website is the Wellness by Design Project, and that's same for my YouTube channel. And Corinne?
I'm Corinne Health, which is actually quite easy, CORINNE Health. And we have a Facebook, Take Charge of Your Health Radio with Corinne and Carol. And we have a YouTube. And this is really fun. We're reaching lots more people and we're loving it. We really are. And that is Take Charge of Your Health Radio. And you type that into YouTube and up we come with multiple episodes. So this has been quite a heavy duty talk on our liver, but guess what? Our liver needed it and deserved it. It deserved the attention. It deserved all the attention we gave it. But now our next show on the liver, I believe that what we should do, Carol, what do you think? I think we should do lists of herbs and ways and methods to help our liver function better. What do you think?
That sounds great. So we'll be back next week. Please join us. Please join us on YouTube and listen to our radio show.
Thank you very much, Carol. When we're together, I always learn, and it's always fun. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
That's all for this episode of Take Charge of Your Health. This program shares information to help you become an active participant with your healthcare provider. It's not intended to treat or diagnose. Visit CorinneHealth.com and Carol Petersen's The Wellness by Design Project.com. Join our Facebook page, Take Charge of Your Health with Corinne and Carol. Subscribe on YouTube at Take Charge of Your Health Radio to submit live questions. We'll respond. See you next week. Bye-bye. This is Jeremy Murphy signing off.